It's the Friday Cocktail with Anna Glowinski.
And also with Jordan Wylie MBE. I'm delighted to be joined with him. Adventurer, author, TV star, expeditionist, adventurer, and an MBE. You've got the most interesting life, absolutely fascinating, and you're taking on your biggest challenge yet. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year to you and all the team and everybody listening. So thank you.
Yes, Happy New Year. Have you set any New Year's resolutions, or are you just focusing on your task ahead?
Oh, I've always got loads of resolutions, things that I want to do less of normally. And they all normally involve things like food and drink. Most of us, I guess.
Yeah, they are the traditional ones, aren't they, really?
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got a big mountain to climb at the end of the year, so I've got a good sort of goal to focus on, which is I always need that motivation. I don't know about you, but when I really need to work hard at something, I need a goal to achieve. You know, if I want to get fitter or healthier, I need a physical goal at the end of that road. Otherwise, I find it difficult to motivate.
I mean, yeah, but it's a pretty extreme thing to decide. I need to go across Antarctica in order to maybe shed a couple of pounds, and also you need to fuel for that as well. So I don't think that you need to be giving yourself any excuses not to eat or any reasons not to eat. You get that food down you, I think.
You're a bad influence, Anna.
Absolutely not. I am absolutely fascinated to have you on the line today because your story is just mad. You're just like this one person example of all the best Netflix documentaries out there. The things that you've done is
you're very kind.
Is insane. Let's just get people to get to know you at the beginning. Who are you? You know, where did you grow up? And, your background, how did that shape the person that you are today?
Yeah, well, it's been, as you say, it's been quite a journey, and I'm probably people will guess I'm from the north of England through my tones, but I live in the south these days. I'm from a place called Blackpool, a seaside town in Lancashire. I'm very proud to be from Blackpool, and I grew up there, and until I was 16, that was my home. And then, unfortunately, I didn't do too great at school. I'm not very proud of that because I go back into a lot of schools these days and sort of try and champion education for young people. But I am proud to say that I did go back to school as an adult and did all my qualifications and my degrees and what have you. But when I was 15, 16, I was a bit of a naughty little boy and I was often in trouble. And I guess actually a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I guess at the age of 40, getting that diagnosis, it sort of made sense of what I was like in a classroom at sort of 11 to 16. But I've always loved the outdoors. I've always loved adventure. You know, I've not been someone who was sort of ever one of these gamers or on the Xboxes and PlayStations growing up. I was always someone who was climbing trees or, sort of camping out, making a den. And that was sort of my thing. And then when I joined the army at 16, straight from school, and because I didn't have any qualifications, I ended up becoming a frontline soldier, and then went and served in places like Iraq and Northern Ireland. And it got really, that was my education, I guess, because I got to see a lot of the world. And I always say to young people, one of the best things you can do to educate yourself is travel, to meet new people, to experience different cultures, try different foods and that sort of thing. I think it gives you a real education in life to do that sort of thing. So I think my best education came from the military. I left the army sort of 15 years ago, and I've always had this dream that I wanted to, climb big mountains, jump out of planes and row across oceans. And I don't make a great living, but I do that for a living these days.
Well, it depends what you mean by a great living. Your life is lived greatly, I would say.
I'm never going to be rich, but I'm doing all the things that I wanted to do as a kid and still doing them as an adult, I guess.
And rich in experiences, for sure. And you just mentioned, the best thing you think that children could do, or as they become adults, is travel and, try different foods, meet different people. But obviously going into the army is no picnic. When you're in front lines in places like Iraq or in actual war zones, it's not a gentle way to travel the world. How did that impact your life vision? How did it change you as a person? I'm going to use the word slightly delinquent. Sorry, but it came up in your bio, so it's not it's not me. Slightly delinquent, maybe 16-year-old to having discipline, but also seeing and experiencing hard things.
Yeah, well, it's a great point and a good question. And I think for me, what I learned at 16 onwards from being in the military was all about values. And I think that was something that I didn't have perhaps as a teenager or as a kid growing up. I think it's something today that was installed in me at a young age as a soldier, and it's something that I still use every day. Things like courage, respect, integrity, loyalty, discipline, selfless commitment, those core values that we carry, I found that they're like the best decision-making tool that we can have that are available to us at all times. And it doesn't mean we're always going to do everything right or never fail, but it means that we've got a bit of a compass that can guide us and bring us back on track when things aren't perhaps going to plan. So I think having values is really important. Perhaps even more important than education or experience or anything else, because they really help you sort of navigate the challenges of life. That was something that I definitely learned in the military. And I think, as a soldier going on operations to places like Iraq and seeing some of the things that you would see as a frontline soldier and experiencing, they teach you a lot about how fragile life can be in some parts of the world, and how grateful we have to be for every breath that we take, really, because we just never know what's around the corner. I've lost lots of friends and seen some horrific things with children, and you just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So I always, when I'm on my adventures, when I'm looking for a bit of fuel or motivation when things are getting tough, I always try to have a sense of gratitude for life, that I'm still able, I might be, crossing Antarctica and I'm thinking, oh, this is too hard or too difficult, but I'm thinking what a privilege it is to be living and breathing and doing this in this extraordinary place. And I try to use hardships as fuel to be grateful in life. But carrying values is the most important thing, I think, for any young people out there, but living and breathing your values and having strong values.
I mean, the Army sounds like it had a really big impact on you in terms of discipline, and obviously you're raising money for the cadets, which I don't want to go into right now. We'll go into a little bit later on. But so you have a great belief and you had a great support from the Army. Other people go into the Army and they come back with PTSD and get spat out. What was it for you that was able to channel these experiences into living a positive and doing positive things with your life afterwards, as opposed to getting deflated? And how did the Army support you with that, with that positive self-development there forward?
It's a difficult one. And as you say, lots of people who come out of the military have lots of different challenges. And I'm no different in that respect. I've often struggle with my own mental health and well-being. I've take medication every day, to be honest with you, for that reason. But I'm a big believer in post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress disorder. I really believe in the growth that can come from negative experiences or perceived negative experiences. As I say, certainly losing friends and seeing nasty things made me really appreciate life and be grateful for my own life more. I think that it's such a complex issue because we're all wired so much differently. All our brains are so complex and so different, and what affects me might not affect someone else, and what affects them might not affect me. And there is no sort of one cat fits all when it comes to anything to do with mental health. But it is such an important subject, and to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I exercise, why I go outside, why I take on challenges, because it gives me that sense of purpose. I think the best medication for anything related to mental health, in my opinion, is the outdoors. I think moving and being outside is such a great medicine for mental well-being that we should be prescribing this in surgeries. Get outside more and, physically exercise, because when you're in a dark place, and I've been there quite a few times, when you're locked in a room in your bedroom or in your living room or whatever it is, nothing's ever going to get better while you're sat there deep in your own thoughts. You need to talk to people. You need to get some fresh air and oxygen in your body. And it's very difficult and very challenging, and lots of great charities out there. Obviously, I try to fundraise for as many charities as I can, but normally the ones that are closest to my heart relate to children and trying to provide opportunities for young people, because I think there are a lot of challenging sort of regions certainly in the UK, in society, in places like where I came from in Blackpool, or in the North, Manchester, Liverpool, London. There are suburbs that opportunities are very difficult for young people to come across. And I think we need to provide opportunities so people can flourish and grow and develop, because it's very easy when you're in these places to sort of go down the wrong path. And, when I was a teenager, I could access things like crime and drugs and alcohol very easily. And when you get into that sort of cycle, it's a very negative sort of slippery slope that you can end up on. And some of I meet in the cadets, even I meet kids that have maybe been kicked out of school or expelled or in detention every week, but when they turn up at the cadets detachments in the UK, they're the best cadets, the most polite, the most respectful, but yes, they're not good in school. And it tells me that there's something wrong with the education system, that it isn't working for everybody. It probably didn't really work for me, because sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day was like being in a prison cell. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be running around. I didn't want to be sat there in a line with looking at a blackboard or a whiteboard or whatever it is. It didn't work for me. And I left school with no GCSEs, but then when I went back to education as an adult, I was able to do masters, bachelors, all my A levels. So it was in there somewhere, but it just wasn't unlocked in that youth sort of period of my life. Because I'm still the same kid, I'm still the cheeky northerner. But that education was in there, and it just needed a different way of sort of harnessing it. And I think that's the case with a lot of not just young people, but adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for answering that so honestly. And I'm glad that I asked it, because I think your perspective on life can really be such an inspiration to so many people. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And let's just have a chat about some of your past missions, expeditions, charity raising initiatives that you've done. Maybe just pick out one or two, or how you started with that, and tell us about some of them, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think when I left the military, one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is a sense of purpose. And I think that's something we all need in life to keep us, again, motivated and striving and thriving to do our best. And, when you're a soldier and you take your uniform and your medals off and you stop polishing your boots for the last time, you're sort of a bit lost, I think. And I found that purpose again by trying to, one, challenge myself by doing adventures, but doing them with a great purpose behind them, whether it's to build a school in Africa, whether it's to support a mental health charity or provide opportunities for young cadets. It gives you a real sense of purpose and pride. And I take fundraising quite seriously, and I've been very fortunate to raise a lot of money for different charities, mainly because I've had some great supporters from the general public and sponsors and things. But the first time I discovered sort of major fundraising was probably about 15 years ago, when some of my friends, they were going to climb Kilimanjaro in Africa, big mountain in Africa, and lots of people climb Kilimanjaro every year. And my friend, who sadly his mother had been affected by cancer, he wanted to do it for a cancer charity. So I said to him, well, lots of people climb this mountain every year, so we've got to do it a little bit differently. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we've got to climb it in a way that's unique. So I said to him, why don't we climb it with no shoes on and call it Barefoot Warriors? And and as you can imagine, they thought it was the most ridiculous idea that they'd ever heard in their lives. And they told me no chance, but they said to me very kindly, if you want to do it, we'll go at your pace, which is obviously a bit slower, and you can do it. And that's what we did. And all I did was take my shoes off and do exactly the same sort of trek that they did, at the same time, at the same speed, the same everything, except for no shoes on. And my fundraising page raised like over 70,000, and their page raised, about £700. And it just made me realize that you don't have to be the best, the fastest, the fittest. You've just got to think a little bit differently to capture the imagination of the public when it comes to fundraising. So I've come up with lots of weird, wacky ones, like the Great British Paddle, attempting to paddleboard around Great Britain, running dangerously, running marathons in the three of the most dangerous countries in the world. We did last year the Ultimate Eco Triathlon, which was a triathlon, which was a sustainable triathlon using sort of a wooden bike, a kayak made of plastic bottles, where I went from Pisa in Italy to Paris to Blackpool in my hometown. It was called Tower Power, the Three Towers of Europe. So yeah, lots of weird and wacky adventures. And I guess the Antarctica one this year is a little bit more serious than that, and a lot more challenging as well.
Yeah, lots of catchy hooks in your fundraising efforts there as well. It's like you're, on one hand, you're a cancer charity's dream, and on the other hand, you're a pedicurist's nightmare.
Yeah.
Take the rough with the smooth. And how do you pick your charities? Is it just an instinct? You just go with what your heart feels like you want to support?
Yeah, I think you have to. A lot of people always ask me, I want to do a fundraiser or do something for charity. Who should I do it for? And I think it's got to come from the heart. It's got to, when it's a cold January morning and you need to go and train for your 5 or your 10K run for your upcoming marathon or whatever it is, you need something that's going to motivate you to get out of bed and go and do whatever it is. So I think you've got to pick what's close to your heart. For me, it's young people and trying to provide and guide and hopefully be a good role model as much as I can. So anything to do with young people and education is important for me. But yeah, you got to be passionate about what you're doing, because that's what's going to drive you when things get difficult, I think. Yeah,
when you're in the struggling mode, because you're taking on challenges that are difficult, so you're going to need something to keep driving you forward.
I remember your why. It's like, for me, it's never about what we're doing. It's about why we're doing it. It's what's the reason for all this. If I could go to my local park run and do a 5K and raise 100,000, that would be great, and it would save me a lot of presentations, knocking on doors for sponsors, and all the rest of it. But unfortunately,
probably a few toes.
Yeah. So you've got to do something that's a bit wacky, crazy, or risky, or daring to attract the big donors and the fundraising. But I also just like to shout out as well to this year's sponsors, all the sponsors that have supported me, and Dynarod, who are sort of the UK's leading expert in plumbing and drainage solutions, because they've stumped up a large proportion of money to get me on this journey, because it's not cheap to go to the coldest and windiest continent on the planet.
Well, fair play to Dynarod. Of course, you can get that in there. Now, you do have, Jordan, a most excellent order of the British Empire. You are an MBE. What did it feel like to receive that?
Oh, it was a great privilege. It's a huge honour, especially as a former soldier. To be presented an MBE and to wear the medal and what have you is a great honour. But I think it's also important that the only reason I received that was because of all the amazing people that donated and have supported me. Because without all their help, I wouldn't have been awarded that, I'm sure. But it was a great privilege. It was the Princess Anne who presented it to me, which was great because she was also my Colonel-in-Chief in the army. She was the Colonel-in-Chief of my regiment, the King's Royal Hussars. So it was extra special. And when she presented it to me, she actually said to me, she went, "You've come a long way, you, from that corporal I used to know many years ago."
Indeed you have. And now you're about to embark on what seems to me to be the biggest of your missions so far, the Antarctic Odyssey 500 Club. Now, you're going to Antarctica. You're crossing Antarctica. Have you got your head around that? That is mad.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be trying to climb a mountain that's never been climbed before in Antarctica. So, I'm going to have to do a bit of skiing with all my equipment, and then I'm going to turn into climbing mode and try and climb a mountain with an expert polar guide. So there'll be me and another person, and I'm very excited. I think for me, like, true exploration is going to places where nobody's ever been. That's like the purest form of exploration. So it's quite exciting in that respect. And
a hard thing to do on today's planet. And now for anyone who, like me, maybe has forgotten their geography, the Antarctic is the South Pole. What are you expecting to see and experience there? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's where the penguins are and not the polar bears. We have to remember that in the south. But yeah, it's the coldest, the windiest, the highest, the driest continent on the planet. It is, I think less than 0.001% of the world will ever visit there. And it is somewhere that we don't really want to encourage people to tourism and things in many respects, because it is a very fragile part of the planet. And part of this expedition is to educate young people in schools about just how fragile the planet is and how pristine we must keep Antarctica. It's one of the last sort of great wildernesses out there. So we're working with a charity in the UK called 2041 Schools, and they create young champions of Antarctica. So we go in schools and we talk about Antarctica. We talk about the fragilities of the planet and the wildlife and nature. And we try and turn the next generation into these young champions who hopefully will go on to do their best to spread the word and protect Antarctica.
Yeah, that message is being spread, I think, more and more through schools as well today. You know, young people are learning about it in a way that you and me didn't when we were at school. And what are you doing to prepare for it? You know, you've got almost a year ahead of you. What sort of things are on the agenda between now and then?
Well, I've just been, much to the entertainment of my neighbours, I've just been pulling a tyre around the local field all morning with a harness on and a big sort of 60 kilogram tyre from a truck. So that's me sort of starting to prepare to get into expedition mode for the year ahead. But I'll be doing lots of things. Can
I just interrupt you there? Is that because you will be crossing the ice with that load on your behind
with
you?
that load, yeah. So I will have like we call it a pulk, but a sled for a better word, a sleigh or a sled, with all my equipment, my tent and my climbing gear on. So I need to get used to pulling weight behind me. So when I arrive, it's not it's less of a challenge when I'm on the ice. So you'll often see polar adventurers, explorers. I say often, if you see them, they're normally pulling a tyre around their local communities.
Yeah, all of them. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And what other things?
Know what they're doing. If you see anyone pulling a tyre, now you know what they're doing. Probably training for a polar expedition.
And your guides or people in the know, how are they helping you to prepare for it? You know, things to expect that perhaps maybe you didn't expect or surprised you.
Yeah, or
that the layman wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'm working with lots of different partners and companies, but Shackleton are a company in the UK who are supporting the expedition with logistics and expertise. So, they've helping me prepare with nutrition, fitness, understanding the polar environment. I have been to Antarctica before, so I haven't done anything of this magnitude, but I know sort of the environment and what to expect. And I've spent a lot of time in cold places around the world previously, so I'm sort of well versed in cold weather, injuries and that sort of thing.
Ooh. So, I mean, fill me in, give me some details.
Yeah, well,
because to me and to most people listening, this is not on our radar. We haven't been, and we're probably not going. So we're going to have to live it vicariously through you.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one when you're operating in extreme cold environments, because you obviously want to stay warm, as warm as possible, but at the same time, you don't want to sweat too much because that can become very dangerous, and can things like frostbite, hypothermia and all those sorts of things. So it's about really understanding your body, regulating your body temperature, because everybody's body, like we talked about mental health earlier, every person's body responds differently to different environments, whether it's extreme heat of the desert or it's the polar environment. So you'll often hear people talk about the polar strip tease, which is sort of the layering system, and having to remove layers when you start and change layers and things like that. So lots of great things, though, and educational things that we can share with the young people in schools and what have you. Yeah,
super interesting. And this little holiday of yours, how long are you expecting it to take you?
I'll probably be in Antarctica for a good, I would think, 3 weeks or so, while this takes place, from probably around Boxing Day this year. So straight after Christmas, I'll be heading there. So I've got 12 months of training, which is great. And then 3 weeks of go for it. Are you nervous? Are you scared? No, I'm excited. I think, I think nerves and excitement are the same emotion, really. I think they're just a different way of thinking and responding to situations. I think, our bodies react in the same way, whether we're nervous or whether we're excited, but it's just our minds sort of absorb that information differently. So I try to have a growth mindset and, think positive. Well, best of luck, of course. And the 500 Club, could you give us, that's what we're here really to promote and get people to get behind. Can you tell us a bit about it and why people should support what you're doing? Yeah, so it's sort of a new idea I came up with for this expedition. It's not something I've personally tried when fundraising before, but there are lots of lots of businesses out there around the world who might want to support this. And basically, what I'm offering is for a £500 or euros or dollars donation, you become a member of the Antarctic Odyssey 500 Club, which means your business or your name. Your logo website will go on my homepage. I'll give you a shout out on social media, and you will also get a limited edition money can't buy coin. Well, it can buy for 500. But yeah, and all the money goes to charity. It all goes to the Army Cadet charity. So any support would be amazing for a £500 donation via my sort of fundraising page. And I'll reach out to you and make the rest happen.
Fantastic. Well, that's the practical side of it, and the emotional side of the Army Cadets. You have already touched on this. Sorry if I'm sort of making you repeat yourself, but let's drum this home. Why should people support the Army Cadets, and why do you want to raise that money?
Well, for me, the Army Cadets are the nation's, certainly the UK's best kept secret. They provide incredible life-changing opportunities for, 11 to 17-year-olds, 12 to 17-year-olds. And they provide, role models that we are often lacking in society today. They have these incredible adult volunteers who, give their blood, sweat and tears every week to help provide opportunities for these young people. They're based on the principles of fun, friendship, action, adventure. We live and breathe our values. And I just think, a lot of people often think that the cadets are there to recruit soldiers and things like that, but that's not the case. What we're here to do is develop good young citizens in society and give them the life skills, things like leadership, communication, teamwork, as well as great skills that they can use, like first aid, swimming, navigation, cooking, bending for themselves, on top of a mountain. We put them in challenging and difficult circumstances in order to help them grow. And any funds that we raise will go to providing lots more of those opportunities for some of the most deprived and challenging communities and children in the country. So any help is greatly appreciated. I want to try and raise £100,000 this year, which is a big ask, but I'm putting it out there and putting my name to it. So fingers crossed we can make it.
Well, if anybody can do it, by the sounds of it, you can. Jordan, it's been really, really fascinating talking to you. And please, will you join us back on the show a year from now after you've done the expedition?
Absolutely.
Tell us all about it.
Privilege and a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jordan, and best of luck with all of it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.